Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to the channel. I'm sorry it's been a while since I've been able to make any projects and videos, but thanks so much for sticking around. Today I'm going to show you how to make my new favorite project, that of flexible wooden ties. So let's get to it. So first off, let's talk design, where all great projects start. And it's going to be a little bit different than the one I showed in the intro. So let me get it on my computer and I'll show it to you. Alrighty guys, so here's what I'm thinking. As you can see, we've got the woods represented here. I plan on using Wenge, which is going to be represented by the brown, and Purple Heart, obviously represented by the purple. And we're going to go for diagonal stripes. So here I have just designed out really quickly kind of the glue up I'm going to need to figure out in order to make this tie work. So we're just going to cut strips and then cut them to length and then glue them up. So should hopefully be pretty simple. I've never glued anything up like this before, but it shouldn't be a problem. Let's get to cutting. Alright, and as you can see guys, here we've got those woods I was talking about. We've got the Wenge here and Purple Heart. As you can see, that is an awesome color combination. Both exotic hardwoods. Wenge is actually one of the most expensive hardwoods I've ever bought, with the exception of ebony, but I've never bought a 12-foot board of ebony because that'd be thousands of dollars. But this board in and of itself was $130, so we are going to try to minimize waste. That board right there is probably about $80. Going to try and minimize waste as much as possible, but let's get started. First, I had to cut the boards to a manageable length. These exotic hardwoods can have some pretty nasty side effects from breathing the dust, so make sure to wear a respirator. It's also pretty tough to cut, and I'm sure my blade is dull on top of that, so just take it slow. And then I could joint and plane the boards. And then start cutting them into strips. It was at this point I started noticing something weird about the Wenge, and that when I cut it, it started turning like bleach yellow, which I didn't really like, but I decided to continue forward and see what would happen. Once I had the strips cut, I put them through the drum sander to make sure they were the perfect thickness and to remove any saw marks. And then I set up a stop block on my chop saw to cut them all to length. And here we have all the different pieces, and it's time to glue them up. For this, since there were so many pieces, I glued up one section at a time, and then once those were set, I glued those sections together. You can see I'm using this square here clamped to the table that helps me maintain the angle that I want. It took a while, but in the end it worked out, and this is what I ended up with. Which I learned was actually too short, and because of the way the Wenge was acting, I decided I totally hated. So I repeated all the previous steps, except better, and with walnut instead, until I had this. As you can see, I cut the 45-degree angle on the chop saw before gluing up. This helped keep things aligned perfectly, but it did make gluing up slightly more difficult, but nothing I couldn't figure out. So I moved right into resawing the piece on the bandsaw. I figured I could get 3 blanks out of this one glue up. I didn't worry about joining it or anything beforehand because I would just have to put each blank through the drum sander anyway. On the left hand side of the screen here you can see the new toy that I got in the middle of this project. It's going to be helping me cut out the actual tie pattern. And check it out, it's a CNC machine. I've been wanting one of these forever and I finally decided to invest in one. There was a bit of a learning curve, but after a lot of trial runs, I was ready. I decided to do 2 different passes on this tie. The first pass is a chamfer pass to make all the corners nice and soft, and then I would change bits and cut almost all the way through the material. I wanted to avoid leaving tabs because that's a lot of extra work to get all your pieces out, so I figured I could just cut almost all the way through the material and then put it through the drum sander to remove the last little bit. And here is that second pass, and it's just cutting almost all the way through here. And of course we couldn't forget putting my logo into this thing. That was pretty fun to watch. And it needed a bit of cleaning up to remove any bit marks or previous sanding marks from the drum sander. Then I could tape the front side. I didn't want the full strength of the tape, so I stuck it to my pants a few times to reduce the holding power. The tape is going to hold all the pieces exactly where they need to be for the next step, which, as I mentioned before, was drum sanding again. I kept putting it through until I could see almost all the lines of the tie. The rest was so thin that I could remove it with an X-Acto knife. Once that was done, it was time to glue it to the fabric, so I removed the tape, keeping the pieces attached. I chose felt because the edges don't fray when you cut it and it's durable. I chose hot glue because it's fast, goes on easy, and adheres to basically everything. So the glue up process was fairly straightforward. Just have to apply glue to the piece, press it down firmly for a few seconds, and then move on to the next piece. The tape helps keep everything perfectly aligned and spaced, so you don't have to worry about that. And it's also a good idea to have a scrap piece of cardboard or something else underneath, so if you do use too much glue, you don't glue everything down to the table. Ask me how I know. And I don't know if you noticed earlier, but I cut the knot out turned 90 degrees, and there's a reason for that, because when you tie an actual tie, the pattern on the knot is rotated 90 degrees. Unfortunately, when I glued the neck strap on this particular knot, I glued it on the wrong side, so the pattern ended up the same orientation as the rest of the tie. Rookie mistake. But once it was all cut out, it was time for just one more cleanup. And of course then I had to cut it out. And then it was time for the best part of any project, applying finish. I love this Minwax wipe-on poly. It goes on super easy and it's impossible to mess up. Plus, it's just a beautiful finish. Also, I kinda ended up getting this tie to the customer before I actually got any footage of the finished product, but here's a very similar tie with just a few differences for you to check out.